So as of right now, nobody's watching these videos, so I'm just going to be putting very low pressure on myself for the quality of content here. Um, and so, with that being said, I would like to discuss a project that I'm working on called I Can't See the Sunrise. And essentially, what this project is about is the current state of our culture and the underlying existential malaise that we're all dealing with in the post COVID era. Most people don't really think about COVID anymore. They don't really think about the lockdowns and all the stuff that we went through. And yet, even though we are acting as though everything's normal, we know deep down that nothing has gone back to the way it was before, that there are so many things that have changed. And a lot of that has to do with the deepening of our screen addictions, the deepening of our compulsive use of social media, the political polarization, our mental health crisis that continues to get worse, the economic instability and just social cohesion that once was is now gradually crumbling. And even just realizing, especially my generation, Gen Z, that the social contract that we were given growing up is essentially null and void. That we were told that we were going to have a better quality of life than our parents and our grandparents, and now that trend is starting to head in the other direction. Uh, we are dealing with, crises of addiction, crises of isolation, crises of masculinity and femininity as gender roles are being, re-examined and in many ways violently torn apart, um, as well as reactionarily defended by traditionalists and all of this kind of stuff going on. So there's just this perfect storm of all these different things going on that are fairly unprecedented in human history. And I have written a lot of poetry over the past 5 years, and there have been a lot of themes that I've noticed come up through this regarding all of these experiences, and a lot of it just comes down to this sense of longing for a level of connection that seems to be inaccessible now. There's a level of confusion and just feeling very insecure in oneself. There's a loneliness to it, and yeah, I could go on, but instead I'm just going to go through and select a few of the poems that I've written and use those as jumping off points to guide this discussion a little bit further. So I'll start with this one. I wrote it actually a few days ago. Smoke has long since left the landscape. Fire once raged, but now only charred, blackened marks remain. Glorious towers, a vast, perfect city, reduced to a heap of ash and ruin. Perhaps amongst the rubble I'll find her. Perhaps in those haunted streets she'll hear me, calling out the way I used to at the train station. Maybe today she'll finally come home. A raven caws above. I know. I know she's gone, and I am alone. So this could be interpreted in many ways, and I'm not going to tell you what you should necessarily think about it, but the way that I have thought about it is the world that we grew up in was destroyed, and it's been replaced by something that is very much more inhuman and it's just intrinsically isolating and atomizing. And I know I'm just using a lot of buzzwords. Something that I have struggled with realizing is that a lot of the people that I look up to, as far as like people who are able to express their ideas through complex writing and prose and public speaking, I feel kind of inferior to them. And again, I'm trying to work out of this frame of performative articulation to try and like impress people. But yeah, it just feels kind of pretentious to read my own poetry and talk about it, but I know that that's just the inner critic. So I'm going to just push through that because resistance would love for me to feel that, oh, I'm not allowed to talk about my own poetry. I'm not allowed to talk about poetry, period, because poetry is cringe. Poetry is too meaningful. Poetry is too authentic. It's too all of these different things. It's just too much. And nobody wants too much. You got to conform yourself to the expectations of other people. And I am tired of doing that. And so maybe that wasn't the best poem to start with, but it's what I did. And so I think it is pertinent to our current era because, so the thing is, that poem may seem abstract because the United States is not having any like major conflicts or anything like that. We're not having cities leveled, but globally, there are many places where this is people's everyday reality, and we are incredibly insulated and in this bubble of safety and comfort and security. And yes, we have our own domestic issues, but they often pale in comparison to the war and the starvation and the famine and the genocide that is happening in other regions of the world. And so we have this strange sense of guilt for living in this way, but we try and suppress that through displacement activities like scrolling on our phone, playing video games, watching porn, TV shows, weed, alcohol, whatever it is. And we don't want to face the fact that we are complicit in this system that takes all of these conflicts and just pushes them onto other people and other regions of the world so that we can benefit ourselves. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's some type of conspiracy, but no, it's just the tragic human nature that we happen to live in this large global hegemon, the United States, that is on its way out. And now we're in this transitory phase that is very tumultuous. And by saying that, I'm not suggesting that there was ever any time that was peaceful. If you look back at the United States history, we've been at war or funding some type of war for pretty much our entire history. So, you know, we may not know exactly what it feels like personally to walk into a city or a town that is completely gone because of a artillery barrage or a bunch of drone strikes or, you know, an atomic bomb or just war. But we've witnessed that over and over and over again through social media. And in this weird way, it's almost kind of numbed us to it. We're much more aware of what's going on in the world, but at the same time, totally jaded and checked out. And that's one of the things that I am approaching with this book project. I Can't See the Sunrise. And I guess I'll explain that title just a little bit. I Can't See the Sunrise is, you know, obviously literally the fact that most of us wake up and the first light that we see is the artificial blue light of our phones. And so our circadian rhythm is thrown out of balance, and I could go down the rabbit hole of the health effects of that. And as a Czech practitioner, that is something that I'm very cognizant of, and I'm working towards in myself, weaning my usage of my cell phone down. That's a literal interpretation. But as far as like, I can't see the sunrise represents the hope for the future. It represents our faith that things will get better and that we can figure this out and that we can fix the problems that are facing us. And the 21st century handed us the polycrisis, which is what, the World Economic Forum and various think tanks and governments have been using as their terminology to understand why everything is so complicated and difficult to deal with over the past 50 or so years. And it's really become popularized in the past couple decades, especially after COVID. The problem, though, with that is that all it is a explanatory, label. It's not actually trying to solve it. It just says, oh, it's the polycrisis. Everything's interconnected. It's this web of seemingly disparate problems that are actually all just feedback loops that play into each other. And it's really tough to solve. And, oh, we can't do that because polycrisis. Oh, but we have to do these draconian measures or whatever because polycrisis. And it's kind of like a catch-all for plausible deniability for why things aren't getting done or why certain things are being pushed without public approval. But that doesn't get to the root. And something that I am working towards in this channel and all of the writing that I do is addressing what's underneath the polycrisis, which is the metacrisis, and that is the death of meaning. Nietzsche said God is dead, and essentially in the age of secularism and materialism, we have stripped the world of its sacredness. We have stripped the world of its interconnectivity. And what used to be totally just a given for pre-modern people, in the sense that there is life and spirit and soul within all sorts of things, and there's deep sacredness and significance to various institutions or rituals and cultural practices, and there's also deep, profound danger in certain things that goes beyond just the physical. All of that's gone, and in an attempt to try and recreate that sense of connectivity, we've gone about dissecting the world into all of these different little parts through a materialist lens and trying to just distill everything down to its most basic bare elements. And what that has left us with is it's all just a bunch of atoms bouncing around randomly in a godless universe, and we live on a spinning rock floating through space. Nothing has any meaning. If I could remember, I would quote the Rick and Morty scene where Morty is essentially telling, I can't remember her name, his sister, to not think so deeply about it. Everyone's going to die. Let's watch TV. And so that's like the nihilist perspective that we've been driven into. And so to tie this all back to the I can't remember the sunrise, that's what we're working with. That is the deck of cards that we were dealt epistemologically as far as the philosophical foundation of our worldview. And it's kind of hard to have hope for the future when that is your core worldview. I mean, I was not raised religious. I was raised in an agnostic or atheist household. And that was difficult when I was in high school. And I went through a lot of darkness with that mindset. And eventually, to try and, bypass all of that dread, I just went straight to New Age and all of the pop spirituality stuff like positive thinking, positive affirmations, manifestation culture, and basically just love and light, and don't, all these aphorisms that are just, that I don't know if that's the right word, but platitudes. Yes, all of these hollow platitudes that sound wonderful and cushy, but don't actually solve anything and totally crumble under the weight of reality. And that's exactly what happened, is that during COVID, those views were tested and they did not hold up their weight. And so I went through this other period of like, oh, fuck, what do I believe now? And so I ended up exploring Christianity, and I did a deep dive into that, and I went from thinking that all Christians were these dumb, homogenous, Bible-thumping idiots and backwards bumpkins. I really want to say the R word, but I'm trying to be PC here. For whatever reason, I feel like that's probably going to be the most problematic word to use in the YouTube algorithm. I don't know. Could be totally wrong about that, but you know what I mean. Anywho, what I realized is that there's 40,000 different denominations of Christianity. There's a huge spectrum of understanding, and there's a very long, deep academic, scholastic, and theological history to the religion. And ultimately, after exploring it deeply, I mean, I specifically, once I realized that, I wanted to figure out, okay, which of these is at the root of Christianity? And so I went to Eastern Orthodox Christianity, because baked into their presupposition is that the totality of, wisdom of God, or the understanding of God, was revealed to Jesus at a particular moment in time. I believe it was Pentecost, and we have just been trying to figure that out from that point. Whereas the Catholics, the Roman Catholics, they have a more evolutionary, innovative way of looking at things. And obviously that was totally like night and day between New Age and Eastern Orthodoxy. Ultimately, neither of them ended up working out for me, and I haven't totally thrown the baby out with the bathwater as far as Christianity goes. I think it's a very valuable religious tradition that, as an American whose family has been here since the 1700s, I have many, many generations of most likely Christian Americans, and then probably before that, Christian Europeans. And so it behooves me to understand what my ancestors actually believed. And I'm sure that if I go back far enough, I'll get to like pagan ancestors and those that had more non-religious views. Anywho, my point being is that I've come to a place now where I'm seeking views that are life-affirming rather than life-negating. And I forgive me for the long tangents that I've been on here, but they all do tie together. Ultimately, I can't see the sunrise is giving name to the problem that our generation has, where we are so overwhelmed and daunted by all of the different issues that the world faces right now, with climate change and political polarization, geopolitical tensions, economic decline, civilizational decline, cultural decay, just the loss of meaning in everything, artificial intelligence, social media, all of this. We don't really see a clear vision, and no one's providing a clear vision for the future. And part of the reason why is because when we really get honest with ourselves, we're likely looking down a trajectory of continued decline, and things are going to get worse before they get better. And a lot of us don't want to accept that. We still believe that maybe there is a sunrise, maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel, and that things are just going to, through a deus ex machina, just going to resolve themselves. But I don't think that that's going to happen. And the collective unconscious recognizes that. And that's why we see so much nihilism and despair and mental health crises. And yet also, at the same time, we see people returning to more traditional ways of meaning making. Like, people are reading more physical books. They're rejecting a lot of this AI slop, even though a lot of people are still trapped in it. And so, not to go on forever, I Can't See the Sunrise is essentially my project that I am working on putting together and publishing soon, that essentially takes us through the felt experience of being a young person in a world where there is no sunrise, and there is no fluffy, airy-fairy, hopeful vision, and that we are having to almost grieve that optimism that we once had, that we were given to in the social contract growing up, especially in the, on the tail end of probably the wealthiest, most opulent period of human history ever, from like the 1950s to the 90s. Totally unprecedented, historically speaking. And this mirage of the middle class kind of appeared. And, ultimately there really is no such thing as the middle class, but, you know, for a time we believed that it was real. And now that's all coming and crashing down and falling apart. And so that's where I'm at with this. And I'm going to continue documenting this process as well as discussing other videos. So far, I have a few up here. One that I would encourage you to watch if you haven't already, which I'll link here, is essentially how creative people get dependent on weed as a way of displacing their creative impulse into this false sense of creative insight and you know, even epiphany and deep thinking, and ultimately it leaves them less capable of being creative and deep thinking. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.